The rain fell in steady sheets that Thursday evening, turning the city streets into rivers of reflected neon and headlights. Inside the glass tower of Sterling Innovations, the 15th floor was nearly empty. Most employees had left hours ago, eager to escape into their evening lives. But Emma Harper remained at her desk, surrounded by coffee cups and crumpled papers, staring at her computer screen with burning eyes. She had been at Sterling for 4 years. For long years of arriving early and leaving late, of double-checking reports that her supervisor would claim as his own, swallowing her words during meetings while others took credit for her ideas. Tonight, something inside her had finally cracked. Emma's fingers trembled as she typed, the words she had rehearsed in her mind 1,000 times. I hereby submit my resignation from Sterling Innovations, effective immediately. The cursor blinked at her, waiting. She took a shaky breath and hit print. The office was quiet except for the hum of the printer. In the distant rumble of thunder, Emma folded the letter carefully, sliding it into a crisp white envelope. Her hands were steady now, filled with the strange calm that comes after a long-fought decision. She looked around at her cubicle, at the awards tucked away in drawers that no one ever saw, at the projects that had consumed her nights and weekends. This was supposed to feel liberating. Instead, it felt like defeat. Emma knew she should take the letter to Human Resources in the morning, follow proper procedure, give 2 weeks' notice. But something in her rebelled against the idea of prolonging this any further. If she was going to leave, she wanted to do it on her own terms. She wanted someone at the top to know why Sterling was losing good people. The executive floor was on the 20th level. Emma had only been there twice in 4 years, both times to deliver urgent documents. As she stepped into the elevator, her reflection stared back at her from the mirrored walls. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hair, pulled back in a hasty ponytail, showed strands of premature gray. She looked exhausted because she was exhausted. Exhausted from trying to prove herself in a place that refused to see her. The elevator doors opened onto a different world. Soft lighting, illuminated cream-colored walls adorned with modern art. The carpet beneath her feet was thick and silent. Everything here spoke of power and money, a stark contrast to the fluorescent-lit cubicle farm below. One office at the end of the hall still glowed with light. Nathan Cross, CEO Emma, had seen him from a distance at company meetings. A tall figure in expensive suits who spoke about innovation and integrity. She wondered if he had any idea what really happened on the floors beneath. Her knock on his door sounded. Too loud in the quiet hallway. Come in, a voice called from inside. Emma pushed open the door and stepped into an office that seemed to be made entirely of glass and possibility. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering city. Nathan Cross sat at his desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, looking far more human than she had expected. He glanced up, surprise flickering across his features. Can I help you? Emma's prepared speech evaporated. She stood there, envelope in hand, suddenly aware of how disheveled she must look. Mr. Cross? I'm Emma Harper. I work in marketing. I needed to give you this personally. Nathan set down his pen, giving her his full attention. There was something disarming about his gaze, the way he looked at her as if she was the only person in the world at that moment. At 9 o'clock at night, I didn't want to wait until morning. Emma stepped forward and placed the envelope on his desk. It's my resignation letter. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Nathan picked up the envelope, turning it over in his hands without opening it. Then he did something completely unexpected. He stood, walked to the door, and locked it. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. What are you doing? I'm keeping you from making a mistake. Nathan leaned against the door, arms crossed, his expression serious but not threatening. Sit down, please. Tell me why one of my employees is quitting at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night. You don't even know who I am. Emma Harper, marketing analyst, hired 4 years ago straight out of university. Responsible for the campaign concepts that increased our client retention by 32% last year. Though the credit went to your supervisor, James Sullivan, Nathan returned to his desk, and Emma noticed he had not opened her resignation letter. I know exactly who you are. Emma sank into the chair opposite him, stunned. How? I read every performance review that crosses my desk. I attend meetings where people present ideas they clearly didn't come up with themselves. I'm not blind to what happens in my own company." Nathan's voice held a note of frustration. "But I also can't fix problems I'm not directly told about." The words Emma had kept locked inside for years suddenly came pouring out. She told him about the stolen ideas, the belittling comments, the way James made her feel invisible except when he needed someone to blame for his mistakes. She talked about the sleepless nights, the anxiety that had become her constant companion, the slow erosion of her confidence. Nathan listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When Emma finally fell silent, he opened a drawer and pulled out a file. "Her file? I've been watching your work for over a year," he said quietly. "Every report you've submitted, every campaign you've designed. Do you know why I haven't promoted you yet?" Emma shook her head, afraid to hope. "Because I was waiting for you to realize your own worth. I wanted you to come to me, to fight for yourself, to demand what you deserve." Nathan leaned forward, his gaze intense. "But instead, you're running away." "I'm surviving. Surviving isn't the same as living." Nathan opened her resignation letter and, to Emma's shock, tore it in half. "I have a different proposal. Starting Monday, you work directly with me. No more James, no more stolen credit. I need someone who understands this company from the ground up, someone with fresh ideas and the courage to speak truth to power." Emma's mind spun. "You can't just promote me like that. People will talk. Let them talk. I've spent too long building this company to watch good people leave because of bad managers." Nathan's voice softened. "Emma, I see you. I see your talent, your dedication, your potential. The question is, do you?" The rain continued to fall outside, but inside that office, something shifted. Emma looked at the torn resignation letter, at the man who had just offered her a lifeline she hadn't dared to imagine. "Why?" she whispered. "Why me?" Nathan smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his entire face. "Because 4 years ago, I was exactly where you are now. Someone saw my potential when I couldn't see it myself and gave me a chance. I'm simply paying it forward." Emma thought about the woman she had been when she walked into this office, defeated and ready to give up. She thought about the years of silence, of shrinking herself to fit into spaces that were too small for her dreams. And she thought about what might happen if she said yes to this impossible offer. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted. "I don't need you to know. I need you to try." Nathan extended his hand across the desk. "What do you say, Emma Harper? Are you ready to stop surviving and start living?" Emma looked at his outstretched hand, at the opportunity glimmering in front of her like a door opening onto a brighter world. Outside, thunder rumbled, and lightning split the sky. She thought about how storms always come before clarity, how sometimes you have to walk through the rain to find the rainbow. She reached out and shook his hand. "I'm ready." The weekend passed in a blur of nerves and anticipation. Emma spent Saturday reorganizing her tiny apartment, as if clearing physical space could somehow prepare her for the mental shift ahead. Sunday brought insomnia and a dozen outfit changes before she finally settled on a navy blazer and cream. "Blouse that," said professional, without trying too hard. When Monday morning arrived, she stood outside Sterling Innovations watching other employees stream through the revolving doors, and for the first time in 4 years, she felt something other than dread. The 20th floor greeted her with the same hushed elegance as before. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and perfectly styled silver hair stood waiting by the elevator. She extended her hand with a warm smile that immediately put Emma at ease. "You must be Emma. I'm Patricia Mills, Nathan's executive assistant. Welcome to the chaos." Patricia's laugh was genuine as she guided Emma down the hallway. "Don't let the fancy carpets fool you. We work harder up here than anywhere else in the building, but at least the coffee is better." Emma's new office was smaller than Nathan's, but still larger than any space she had occupied before. Windows overlooked the city, and her desk held a nameplate that read Emma Harper, Senior Strategic Advisor. She traced the letters with her fingertips, still unable to believe this was real. "Nathan wants to see you at 8:30 for the morning briefing," Patricia said, setting a folder on the desk. These are the current projects requiring immediate attention. The Singapore expansion, the merger talks with Phoenix Technologies, and the complete overhaul of our corporate culture initiative. Light reading for your first day. Emma opened the folder and felt her stomach flip. These were decisions that affected thousands of employees and millions of dollars. He wants my input on all of this? He wants more than input. He wants your perspective, your ideas, your honesty. Patricia paused at the door. Nathan doesn't do anything halfway, Emma. If he brought you up here, it's because he believes you can handle it. The question is whether you believe it. The morning briefing included Nathan, Patricia, the CFO Michael Chen, and the head of operations, Diana Rodriguez. Emma sat quietly at first, observing the rapid-fire discussion of quarterly projections and strategic pivots. These were people who spoke in acronyms and referenced decisions made in boardrooms. She had never entered. Then Nathan turned to her. Emma, you've been in marketing for 4 years. What's your read on the Singapore campaign? All eyes shifted to her. Emma felt her throat tighten, the old instinct to shrink and defer rising up. But then she remembered Nathan's words. I see you. She took a breath and spoke. The campaign is technically flawless, but it's missing soul. We're presenting Singapore as a market to penetrate rather than a community to serve. The research shows what products they buy, but not why they buy them or what they value. We're speaking at them instead of with them. Silence filled the room. Emma's heart pounded. She had just criticized a campaign that had probably cost hundreds of thousands to develop. Diana leaned forward, eyes sharp with interest. Go on. If we want genuine market penetration, we need to start with listening. Hire local consultants, conduct community forums, understand the cultural nuances we're missing. Our current approach is colonial, not collaborative. Emma pulled out her tablet where she had spent Sunday nights sketching ideas. What if instead of one massive launch, we did a series of smaller community-specific initiatives? Test, learn, adapt. Show Singapore we're there to contribute, not just to sell. Michael nodded slowly. That would require restructuring the entire timeline and budget. It would also increase our success rate by at least 40% based on similar approaches in other markets, Emma countered. Pulling up comparative data she had researched, Nathan's expression was unreadable. Then he smiled. Diana, Michael, work with Emma to revise the proposal. I want the new approach on my desk by Friday. He stood, gathering his papers. This is exactly the kind of thinking we need. Fresh eyes, unafraid to challenge the status quo. As the meeting dispersed, Diana caught Emma's arm. That took guts. Most people spend their first week nodding and agreeing with everything. You might actually survive up here. The compliment warmed Emma more than she wanted to admit. But her moment of triumph was short-lived. As she returned to her office, she passed the 15th floor elevator just as James Sullivan stepped out. His face darkened when he saw her. Oh well. Emma Harper on the executive floor. I heard the rumors, but I didn't believe them. James's voice dripped with insinuation. Interesting how quickly you moved up after a private evening meeting with the CEO. She knew exactly what he was implying, and the unfairness of it made her want to scream. But she had spent 4 years letting James's words cut her down. Not anymore. James, I earned this position through 4 years of work that you repeatedly took credit for. If you have concerns about my qualifications, I suggest you take them to HR. Otherwise, I have actual work to do. She walked past him, head high, refusing to let him see her hands shake, but James wasn't finished. Over the next 2 weeks, whispers followed Emma through the building. She overheard conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. Anonymous comments appeared on the company's internal message boards questioning her sudden promotion. The implication was always the same. She had slept her way to the top. Emma threw herself into work. Determined to prove her worth through results, she redesigned the Singapore strategy, collaborated with international teams, and spent late nights ensuring every detail was perfect. Nathan treated her exactly as he treated every other senior advisor, with professional respect and high expectations. If he noticed the rumors, he never mentioned them. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. Emma was presenting the revised Singapore proposal to the full executive board. 20 faces stared at her from around the massive conference table, including several board members she had only seen in company newsletters. Her PowerPoint detailed the community-focused approach, the revised budget, the projected outcomes. She was halfway through when James burst into the room. "I apologize for the interruption, but I have information the board needs to hear." James's face was flushed, his voice too loud. "This entire proposal is based on stolen research from my team. Emma Harper has been using her position to access proprietary work and pass it off as her own." The room erupted. Board members exchanged glances. Nathan's expression turned to stone. Emma felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. This was it. James had finally found a way to destroy her. "That's a serious accusation," Nathan said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Do you have evidence?" James pulled out a folder, spreading papers across the table. "These are drafts from my team dated 3 months ago. Compare them to Emma's proposal. The similarities are undeniable." Emma stared at the documents, her mind racing. Then she recognized them. They were her own notes, the ones she had submitted to James's team as part of her regular duties. He had kept them, filed them under his team's name, and was now using them as evidence against her. The old Emma would have shrunk away, would have apologized and accepted defeat. But something had changed in these past weeks. Nathan had seen her worth. Diana had respected her ideas. She had tasted what it felt like to use her voice, and she would not be silenced again. Emma stood, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Those documents are mine. I created them 3 months ago as part of my regular submissions to James's department. I have the original files, complete with metadata showing creation dates, my user ID, and revision history. James has been filing my work under his team's name for years." "That's absurd," James sputtered. "Why would I do that?" "Because you've built your entire career on other people's ideas." Emma pulled out her laptop, connecting it to the projector. "I've kept copies of everything. Every email where you requested my input and later presented it as your own. Every meeting where you dismissed my suggestions only to propose them as your ideas weeks later. Every performance review where you took credit for work you never touched." The evidence filled the screen. Timestamps, email chains, document histories, for years of theft laid bare for everyone to see. The board members leaned forward, expressions shifting from skepticism to shock to anger. Nathan stood, his voice cutting through the tension. "James, you're suspended, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. Security will escort you from the building." "You can't do this," James protested, but 2 security officers were already moving toward him. "This is favoritism. This is bias. This is justice," Diana interrupted, her voice sharp. "We've all wondered how you produced such innovative work while your team consistently underperformed. Now we know." As James was led from the room, Emma remained standing, her entire body trembling with the aftermath of adrenaline. The board members were talking among themselves, reviewing the evidence she had presented. Nathan caught her eye and gave a small nod of approval. Patricia appeared at Emma's elbow with a glass of water. "Drink this, and breathe. You just did something extraordinary." The meeting continued with Emma presenting the rest of her proposal, but she barely remembered the details. Everything felt surreal, as if she had stepped outside her own body and was watching events unfold from a distance. When the board voted unanimously to approve her Singapore strategy, the applause seemed to come from very far away. Afterward, Nathan asked her to stay behind as the room emptied. They stood by the windows overlooking the city, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor. "I knew James was taking credit for work that wasn't his," Nathan said quietly, "but I never realized the extent of it. I'm sorry you had to deal with that for so long." "Why didn't you say something if you knew?" "Because you needed to find your own voice, to realize you didn't need me or anyone else to validate your worth." Nathan turned to face her. "Today, you proved you could stand up for yourself. That's more valuable than any promotion I could give you." Emma felt tears prick her eyes, but they were different tears than the ones she had cried weeks ago. These were tears of release, of transformation, of finally becoming the person she was meant to be. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Nathan smiled. "I didn't make you into anything, Emma. I just gave you the space to become who you already were." As Emma returned to her office that evening, she noticed something different in how people looked at her. Not with suspicion or judgment, but with respect. She had earned her place here, and everyone knew it. 3 months passed like pages turning in a book Emma never wanted to put down. The Singapore project launched to remarkable success, generating headlines in international business journals and setting a new standard for how sterling innovations approached global markets. Emma found herself invited to speak at conferences, consulted on strategies that reached far beyond marketing, and mentioned, in the same breath as the company's top innovators, but success brought its own complications. The more time Emma spent working alongside Nathan, the more she noticed things that had nothing to do with business. The way he listened with complete attention when she spoke, as if her words mattered more than anything else in that moment. How his rare smiles seemed reserved especially for her, transforming his serious features into something warm and genuine. The accidental brush of hands when they reached for the same document, the lingering glances across conference tables, the conversations that stretched long past business hours into territory that felt dangerously personal. Emma tried to ignore it. Nathan was her boss, her mentor, the man who had given her a second chance when she was ready to give up. Getting involved with him would confirm every ugly rumor that had circulated when she first arrived on the 20th floor. It would undermine everything she had worked so hard to prove, yet her heart seemed to have its own agenda, one that accelerated every time Nathan entered a room. It was a rainy Tuesday evening, so similar to that first night that Emma felt caught in some strange loop of time. She was alone in her office reviewing proposals for the European expansion when Nathan appeared in her doorway. He had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, and there was something different in his expression, something vulnerable. "Do you have a minute?" he asked, of course. Emma gestured to the chair across from her desk, but Nathan remained standing, hands in his pockets, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "I've been trying to figure out how to say this professionally, but I'm realizing there's no professional way to say it." Nathan took a breath. "So, I'm just going to be honest. These past 3 months working with you have been the best, of my career, not because of the success we've achieved, but because of who I get to achieve it with." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "Nathan, I don't think—" "Please let me finish." He moved closer, his voice soft but steady. "I know all the reasons this is complicated. I know people will talk that they'll say, I promoted you because of personal interest rather than merit. But Emma, you earned everything you have here. Your talent speaks for itself, and my feelings for you don't change that truth. They're just something separate that I can't seem to control anymore." The rain drummed against the windows, filling the silence that stretched between them. Emma stood, needing to be on equal ground for this conversation. "What are you saying exactly?" "I'm saying that somewhere between that first night when you handed me your resignation and now, I stopped seeing you as just a brilliant colleague. I started seeing you as someone I think about first thing in the morning and last thing at night. Someone whose happiness matters to me more than my own." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration Emma had never seen from him before. "I'm saying I have feelings for you, Emma. Real, complicated, completely inappropriate feelings that I've tried and failed to ignore." Emma's mind raced through a dozen responses. The practical voice reminded her of company policies, of how this could damage her credibility. The fearful voice warned her that mixing professional and personal always ended in disaster. But beneath those voices was something quieter and truer. Something that had been growing in the spaces between their conversations and the moments. When their eyes met across crowded rooms, "I need to know something," Emma said finally. "If I had never come to work on this floor, if we had just been to people who met somewhere completely ordinary, would you still feel this way?" Nathan considered the question seriously. "I think I would have fallen for you even faster without all the complications holding me back. You're brilliant and brave and kind in ways that have nothing to do with business presentations or marketing strategies. You make me want to be better than I am. Not as a CEO, but as a person. This could ruin everything we've built, Emma whispered. But even as she said it, she was moving closer to him. Or it could be the best decision we ever make. Nathan reached out tentatively, giving her every opportunity to step away. But I won't pressure you, Emma. If you want to keep this purely professional, I'll respect that. I'll lock away these feelings and we'll never speak of them again. Your comfort and your career come first. Emma thought about the woman she had been 6 months ago, so afraid of taking up space that she had nearly erased herself completely. She thought about all the times she had chosen safety over authenticity, silence over truth. And she realized that Nathan wasn't asking her to risk her career or compromise her integrity. He was simply being honest about his feelings and giving her the freedom to choose. She reached up and touched his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. I think about you too, she admitted. More than I should, more than is probably wise. You scare me, Nathan Cross, because you make me want things I never let myself imagine before. What kind of things? His voice was barely above a whisper. A life that isn't just about surviving or proving myself. A partnership built on respect and challenge and trust. Someone who sees all of me, the brilliant parts and the broken parts, and values both equally.
Emma smiled,
feeling tears gather in her eyes. You make me want to be brave in my personal life the way I've learned to be brave at work. Nathan pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. Then be brave with me. We'll figure out the complications together. We'll do everything by the book, disclose to HR, maintain professional boundaries at work, prove to everyone that this doesn't compromise your position or my judgment. And if people still talk, then we'll let them talk while we're too busy building something real to care. Nathan cupped her face in his hands. Emma Harper, would you take a chance on me? Not as your boss, but as someone who wants to know every part of you, who wants to support your dreams and challenge your ideas and stand beside you through whatever comes next. The rain continued its steady rhythm, washing the city clean. Emma looked into Nathan's eyes and saw not the powerful CEO who had offered her a second chance, but simply a man who was offering her his heart with the same vulnerability she was feeling. Yes, she said. And the word felt like freedom. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, full of promise and possibility. It tasted like rain and coffee and the sweet relief of finally admitting a truth they had both been carrying. When they pulled apart, Emma was laughing and crying at the same time, overwhelmed by the enormity of what they were starting. Over the following weeks, Nathan kept his promise. They disclosed their relationship to HR, established clear boundaries at work, and maintained strict professionalism during business hours. It wasn't always easy. There were knowing looks from some colleagues and a few whispered comments about favoritism. But Emma's work continued to speak for itself. She led the European expansion with the same innovative approach that had succeeded in Singapore. She mentored younger employees, sharing the lessons she had learned about finding your voice and standing in your worth. Diana became not just a colleague but a friend. Often joining Emma for lunch and offering advice on navigating corporate politics, Patricia turned into a surrogate mother figure. Checking in on Emma's well-being and sharing stories about watching Nathan grow into his role as CEO 6 months after that rainy Tuesday. Sterling Innovations announced a major restructuring. Nathan promoted Emma to Vice President of Global Strategy, a position created specifically to harness her unique approach to international markets. The announcement was met with applause from the board and respect from her peers. She had proven herself beyond any doubt, but the moment Emma treasured most came on an ordinary Wednesday evening. She and Nathan were in her apartment, cooking dinner together in her tiny kitchen. Music played softly in the background and rain pattered against the windows in an echo of that first transformative night. I've been thinking, Nathan said, stirring pasta sauce while Emma chopped vegetables, about how we got here, and that night when you came to quit, I told you I was keeping you from making a mistake. But I was wrong. He turned to face her, setting down the spoon. You weren't making a mistake. You were making the bravest choice possible, choosing yourself, even when it felt like giving up. I didn't save you, Emma. You saved yourself. I just gave you a different stage to do it on. Emma set down her knife and moved into his arms, fitting perfectly against his chest. We saved each other. You gave me space to find my voice, and I gave you a reason to remember why you built Sterling in the first place. Not for profit or prestige, but to create something meaningful. We make a good team, the best team. Emma pulled back to look at him. I love you, Nathan Cross. Not because you're my boss or my mentor, or because you changed my life, but because you're kind and driven and completely dorky about coffee temperature, and you laugh at my terrible puns even when they're not funny. Nathan grinned, that rare, full smile she had learned to treasure. I love you too, Emma Harper. You're the most extraordinary person I've ever known, and I plan to spend the rest of my life reminding you of that fact until you finally believe it. They sealed the promise with a kiss. There in her small kitchen, with slightly burned pasta sauce and rain falling outside. It wasn't glamorous or perfect, but it was real and theirs and everything Emma had never dared to dream. A year later, Emma stood at a podium addressing Sterling's annual company meeting. She spoke about innovation and courage, about the importance of creating workplaces where people felt valued and seen. As she concluded her remarks to thunderous applause, her eyes found Nathan in the front row. He was smiling at her with undisguised pride and love. After the meeting, a young analyst approached Emma hesitantly. Ms. Harper, can I ask you something? How did you become so confident? Everyone talks about your transformation, but no one knows how you actually did it. Emma thought back to that desperate night when she had written a resignation letter with shaking hands, ready to give up on herself. I stopped waiting for permission to take up space. I stopped believing other people's narratives about my worth, and I found someone who saw my potential before I could see it myself, which helped me learn to see it too. She smiled at the young woman. But mostly, I got tired of being small. I decided that even if I failed, I would fail while being fully myself rather than succeed while being someone else's version of who I should be. That sounds terrifying. It was. But you know what's more terrifying? Looking back at your life and realizing you never tried because you were too afraid of what people might say. Emma squeezed the analyst's shoulder gently. You have something valuable to contribute. Don't wait for a crisis to realize it. Start speaking up now, today, in small ways that build into bigger ones. As the young woman walked away with a thoughtful expression, Nathan appeared at Emma's side. Still changing lives, I see. It's just paying forward what someone once did for me. Emma leaned into him slightly, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. They walked out of the building together into the golden light of early evening. The city stretched before them, full of possibility and promise. Emma thought about how dramatically her life had changed, how the worst night had led to the best chapter, how sometimes you have to break completely before you can rebuild yourself into something stronger. What are you thinking about? Nathan asked, interlacing his fingers with hers. I'm thinking that I almost missed all of this. I almost walked away from Sterling, from my career, from the possibility of us. I almost let fear win. But you didn't. That's what matters. Emma stopped walking and turned to face him fully, there on the busy sidewalk with people streaming past them. No, what matters is that I learned something important. The right people will see your worth even when you can't see it yourself. But eventually, you have to start seeing it too. You have to become your own champion. Nathan kissed her forehead gently. And you have. You're not the same person who walked into my office ready to quit. You're the woman who stood up to James, who revolutionized our international strategy, who mentors young analysts and speaks at conferences and makes me proud every single day. I'm still scared sometimes, Emma admitted. Scared that I'll wake up and this will all disappear. That I'll find myself back in that cubicle feeling invisible. Then I'll remind you every day that you're real and valued and exactly where you're supposed to be. Nathan pulled her close. That's what partners do. We remind each other of the truth when fear tries to tell us lies. They continued walking, talking about their plans for the weekend. The new project Emma was developing, the vacation they were planning to take. Ordinary conversations that felt extraordinary simply because they were together that night. As Emma lay in bed listening to Nathan's steady breathing beside her, she thought about the story she would tell someday. Not the sanitized version for business magazines, but the real story about a woman who reached her breaking point and found it was actually a breaking open. About a boss who saw potential instead of problems. About two people who chose courage over convenience and built something beautiful in the process, outside. Rain began to fall again, gentle and cleansing. Emma smiled in the darkness, remembering how she used to hate rainy nights because they made everything feel hopeless. Now they reminded her that storms pass, that morning always comes. That sometimes you have to walk through the rain to appreciate the sunshine she had walked into. Sterling Innovations 4 years ago, as a girl trying to prove herself. She had almost walked out as a woman ready to give up. But she had stayed, had transformed, had become someone she was proud to be. And this, Emma realized as sleep pulled her under, was the real gift Nathan had given her. Not a promotion or a relationship, but the space to discover who she had been all along. Someone brave, capable, worthy of love and success and every good thing life had to offer, someone who had finally learned to stay. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Sterling, Innovation's newest headquarters in Singapore. Emma Cross stood at the floor-to-ceiling glass, watching the city come alive below. Her reflection showed a woman transformed, confident, poised, wearing success like a second skin. Behind her, the office door opened. Nathan entered carrying 2 cups of coffee, just the way she liked it. After 5 years together, some rituals never changed. "The board meeting starts in 20 minutes, he said, handing her a cup. "Ready to announce the new initiative?" Emma turned, a smile playing at her lips. The ring on her left hand caught the light they had married 2 years ago in a small ceremony, with only their closest friends and family. No corporate spectacle, just 2 people promising to continue choosing each other every day. "I'm ready. Though I still can't believe we're launching mentorship programs in 15 countries simultaneously." "It was your vision," Nathan reminded her. "The Emma Harper Foundation for Professional Development. Helping people find their voices before they reach breaking points." Emma thought about all the young professionals they had already helped, people stuck in toxic environments. Overlooked despite their talents, ready to give up on dreams they had barely begun to chase. The foundation identified them, supported them, gave them tools and confidence to advocate for themselves. "It's strange," she mused. "If I hadn't almost quit that night, none of this would exist. All those people we've helped would still be suffering in silence." Nathan wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Maybe that's the point. Our worst moments become our greatest catalysts, if we let them." "You turned your pain into purpose," a knock interrupted them. Patricia poked her head in, now Emma's own executive assistant. "The delegation from Tokyo just arrived." "And Emma, your mother called? She wanted to remind you about dinner on Sunday. She's very proud of the magazine article, by the way." Emma laughed. Her mother kept every article written about her daughter's success in a scrapbook. Still unable to believe how far Emma had come from that tiny apartment, those early struggling years. As they walked together toward the boardroom, Emma's mind drifted to that younger version of herself, exhausted, crying, clutching a resignation letter like a life raft. If she could go back and whisper to that broken woman, what would she say? Stay. Just stay one more day. Because the door you think is closing is actually opening. Because the man who locks that door will unlock something in you that you didn't know existed. Because your story isn't ending, it's finally beginning. You are worthy. You are capable. You are seen. And 5 years from now, you'll stand in an office in Singapore as Vice President of Global Operations, married to a man who chose you every day just as you choose him. You'll run a foundation that changes lives. You'll mentor dozens of young professionals who remind you of yourself. You'll look back at this moment and realize that almost quitting was actually the first brave thing you did in a lifetime of brave things to come. So stay. Stay and see what happens when you stop running from yourself and start running toward who you're meant to become. The boardroom doors opened. Faces turned toward Emma expectantly, board members, executives, partners from around the world, all waiting to hear her vision, her strategy, her words. Nathan squeezed her hand once before taking his seat, a private gesture of support and love. Emma stepped to the front of the room, no notes needed. She knew this material by heart because she had lived it. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today, we're not just announcing a program. We're starting a movement. As she spoke, her voice strong and certain, Emma felt a moment of profound gratitude. For Nathan, who had seen her when she was invisible. For Patricia and Diana, and everyone who had supported her journey. For her mother, who had taught her that strength came in many forms. For the young analyst she had once been, who had somehow found the courage to keep going when giving up seemed easier. But mostly, Emma was grateful for that rainy Thursday night 5 years ago. The night she had walked in ready to quit, and a CEO had locked the door and said, "You're staying with me." He had been right. She had stayed. And in staying, she had found everything she never knew she was searching for: purpose, partnership, and the most important discovery of all, herself. Outside the windows, Singapore sparkled under the tropical sun. Somewhere in that city there was probably someone sitting at a desk right now, exhausted and overlooked, wondering if they should give up. Someone clutching their own resignation letter, convinced that walking away was the only option left. Emma hoped they would find their way to someone who saw them. But more than that, she hoped they would learn to see themselves, to recognize their own worth before a crisis forced them to. Because the truth Emma had learned, the truth she now dedicated her life to teaching others, was simple but powerful. You don't need anyone to give you permission to be extraordinary. You don't need a CEO to lock the door and make you stay. Just need the courage to see yourself clearly, to speak your truth boldly, to keep showing up even when the world tries to make you small. The rest, the success, the love, the transformation, that's just what happens when you finally stop hiding and start living. Emma finished her presentation to enthusiastic applause. As the meeting transitioned to questions and discussion, she caught Nathan's eye across the room. He smiled at her. It's that same genuine smile that had helped her believe in herself all those years ago. She smiled back. Silent conversation was passing between them. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for letting yourself be seen." The rain that had marked their beginning had given way to sunshine. But Emma no longer feared the storms. She had learned that rain was just weather, temporary and necessary. What mattered was having the courage to stand in it, knowing that clear skies would come again, and they always did. That closes behind you isn't trapping you. It's protecting you from leaving before you discover who you're meant to become. Sometimes staying is the bravest thing you'll ever do.
Megan Taylor hurried through the sterile corridors of Riverview Memorial Hospital, her auburn hair falling loose from its once neat bun. The antiseptic smell of the hospital invaded her nostrils as she clutched a bouquet of sunflowers, her best friend Diane's favorite. Room 412, that's what the receptionist had said. Megan had been in meetings all day and had missed the visiting hours rush. Now at 8:30 p.m., the hospital hallways were eerily quiet, except for the occasional squeak of nurses' shoes and the distant beeping of monitors. She counted the room numbers as she walked. 408, 410, 412. The door was slightly ajar, and Megan gently pushed it open, expecting to see Diane recovering from her appendectomy. Instead, the room was dimly lit with just a single lamp casting a warm glow over a man lying in the hospital bed. He wasn't Diane. Megan froze, realizing her mistake. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, backing toward the door. "Wrong room." The man's eyes fluttered open, and they were the most striking shade of blue she'd ever seen. Despite the pallor of his skin and the IV tube snaking from his arm, there was something commanding about his presence. "I've waited for you," he whispered, his voice raspy but strong. Megan's hand stopped on the doorknob. "Excuse me?" He smiled weakly. "The nurse said someone would bring my dinner 30 minutes ago. I'm starving." Relief washed over Megan. "Oh, I'm not hospital staff. I'm visiting a friend, but I got the wrong room. Sorry to disturb you." As she turned to leave, the man attempted to sit up, wincing with effort. "Wait, since you're here, would you mind passing me that water? The call button is out of reach." Megan hesitated but then stepped forward, placing the sunflowers on a nearby chair. She handed him the water glass from the bedside table, noticing the expensive watch on his wrist and the MacBook perched on the rolling table. "Thank you," he said after taking a sip. "I'm Jackson Bennett." The name struck a chord in Megan's memory. Jackson Bennett, the CEO of Innovate Technologies, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. His face had been on the cover of Business Weekly just last month. "You're Jackson Bennett? The Jackson Bennett?" Megan blurted out before she could stop herself. A smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Last time I checked. And you are?" "Megan Taylor. I work at Carson & Associates, the marketing firm." "Carson & Associates," he repeated thoughtfully. "We've considered hiring them for our new product launch." An awkward silence fell between them. Megan shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Well, I should go find my friend." "Room 421, not 412, she said, mentally kicking herself for the mix-up. "Before you go, Megan Taylor from Carson & Associates, would you humor a bedridden CEO for a moment?" His expression was both challenging and vulnerable, a combination Megan found strangely compelling. Against her better judgment, she sat down in the visitor's chair. "What happened to you?" she asked, gesturing to his bandaged chest visible beneath the hospital gown. "Car accident. 3 days ago." "Broken ribs, punctured lung, concussion, the works. Makes for a great story at the next board meeting." His attempt at humor was undermined by the grimace that followed. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be. It was my fault. Working while driving. The irony is I was on my way to a meeting about our company's wellness initiative." He laughed, then immediately regretted it, clutching his side. Megan found herself smiling despite the situation. There was something disarming about Jackson, a stark contrast to the cutthroat CEO persona portrayed in the media. "So who's the lucky friend getting these?" Jackson nodded toward the sunflowers. "My best friend Diane. Appendicitis. Nothing serious, but I promised I'd visit. Then you should go. She's waiting for you." His eyes met hers, and for a split second, Megan felt something pass between them, a connection, fleeting but undeniable. As she stood to leave, Jackson spoke again. "It was nice meeting you, Megan Taylor, even if it was a case of mistaken room identity." Megan retrieved her flowers, an impulsive thought forming. She separated 2 sunflowers from the bouquet and placed them in the empty vase on his bedside table. "For your wellness initiative," she said with a smile. "Get better soon, Mr. Bennett." As she closed the door behind her, Megan couldn't shake the strange feeling that this accidental meeting was somehow significant. She found room 421 and spent the next hour chatting with Diane, but her mind kept wandering back to room 412 and the blue-eyed CEO who had whispered, "I've waited for you." The next morning, Megan arrived at Carson & Associates to find her boss, Nathan, pacing the conference room. "There you are, emergency meeting. Our biggest pitch of the year just got moved up. Innovate Technologies wants to see our presentation this Friday instead of next month." Megan nearly dropped her coffee. "Innovate Technologies? Jackson Bennett's company?" "Yes, and we need all hands on deck. This account could transform our firm." As her colleagues filed into the room, Megan's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Sunflowers brighten up a hospital room considerably. Thanks for the wellness tip. Dinner to discuss Carson & Associates pitch. I promise not to be in a hospital gown this time. JB." Megan stared at her phone, her heart racing. How had he gotten her number? And more importantly, wasn't this a conflict of interest? Yet as Nathan began outlining their strategy for winning Innovate Technologies business, Megan couldn't help but wonder if her accidental wrong turn last night had been fate after all. Megan's thumb hovered over her phone screen, her mind racing through the professional implications of replying to Jackson's text. She was a senior account manager at Carson & Associates, not the most influential position, but certainly one that would raise eyebrows if she were discovered having dinner with a potential client, especially a client as high profile as Jackson Bennett. "Megan, are you even listening?" Nathan's voice cut through her thoughts. The conference room had emptied, leaving just the 2 of them. "Sorry, I was just thinking about the pitch," she said, quickly pocketing her phone. Nathan sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "This is the biggest opportunity we've had in years. Carson & Associates needs this account, especially after losing the Meridian project last quarter." Guilt gnawed at Megan. The Meridian project had been her responsibility, and despite her best efforts, the client had chosen their competitor. Another failure could damage her career irreparably. "I understand. I'll start revising the presentation today," she promised. Back at her desk, Megan pulled up the preliminary pitch they had prepared for Innovate Technologies. It was good, but not great. Certainly not good enough to impress a visionary like Jackson Bennett. As she scrolled through the slides, her phone buzzed again. No pressure on the dinner. Just thought it might be helpful for both of us. I could give you insights on what Innovate is really looking for. JB. Megan bit her lip. Put that way, it almost sounded like a professional courtesy. Before she could overthink it, she typed a reply. Dinner could work. But to be clear, this is about providing your company with the best marketing strategy, nothing more. How's Thursday at 7? MT. His response came almost immediately. Understood. I'll send a car, nothing fancy, just a quiet place where we can talk business. Megan spent the next 2 days immersed in research, learning everything she could about Innovate Technologies and their upcoming product launch, a revolutionary smart home system that promised to be more intuitive and privacy-focused than anything on the market. By Thursday afternoon, she had completely overhauled Carson's original pitch, incorporating insights from industry reports and consumer trends. You look nice, commented Harriet, her office neighbor, as Megan touched up her lipstick. Hot date? Business dinner, Megan corrected, smoothing down her navy blue dress, professional yet flattering. With a potential client. Harriet raised an eyebrow. Must be important if you're breaking out the good pearls. At precisely 7 p.m., Megan stepped outside the office building to find a sleek black car waiting. The driver opened the door, revealing Jackson Bennett in the back seat, looking remarkably recovered. Gone was the hospital pallor, replaced by a healthy glow. He wore a casual but expensive-looking charcoal sweater that made his blue eyes even more striking. You look well for someone who was hospitalized less than a week ago, Megan remarked as she slid into the seat beside him. Excellent medical care and stubborn determination, he replied with a smile. Though my doctor wasn't thrilled about me checking out early. The car took them to a small, elegant restaurant tucked away in a historic building downtown. It was the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu and served wine in crystal glasses. Despite the upscale setting, there was an intimacy to the space that made conversation easy. So, Mr. Bennett. Jackson, please. Mr. Bennett makes me sound like my father. Jackson, Megan corrected herself. You mentioned giving me insights about what Innovate Technologies is looking for. I'm all ears. Jackson studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. First, I want to know more about you, Megan Taylor. How did you end up at Carson & Associates? That's not relevant to your marketing needs, she pointed out. Humor me. I like to know who I'm working with. Megan took a sip of her water, weighing her options. Fine. I graduated from Northwestern with a degree in marketing and communications, worked at 2 smaller agencies before landing at Carson 5 years ago. I've led campaigns for Westridge department stores, Altitude Airlines, and most recently, I lost the Meridian project to our competitors. Honesty, I appreciate that, Jackson said. Most people would have left out that last part. I believe in transparency. Now about those insights, Jackson leaned forward. The truth is, Innovate's board is pushing me to go with Apex Marketing. They have a bigger name, more resources, but I've seen their work, and it's all flash, no substance. So why consider them at all? Corporate politics. My board chair, Victor Harrington, plays golf with Apex's CEO. Jackson's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Victor and I have differing visions for the company's future. And where do we fit in? Carson is smaller than Apex with fewer resources, but more creativity, more hunger. I've seen your work for Altitude. Turning a budget airline into a lifestyle brand was genius. Megan couldn't help feeling flattered. That campaign had been her brainchild, a risky strategy that had paid off magnificently. Tell me about your new product, she said, steering the conversation back to business. Jackson's eyes lit up as he described HomeSync, their smart home system. Unlike its competitors, HomeSync processed all data locally rather than in the cloud, addressing privacy concerns that had plagued similar products. It was elegant, intuitive, and according to Jackson, would revolutionize how people interacted with their homes. As they talked, Megan found herself genuinely engaged, her marketing mind already formulating strategies. Jackson was different here, away from the hospital and the corporate world. Passionate, articulate, even funny in a dry, self-deprecating way. She caught herself laughing more than once at his anecdotes about startup culture. You're not what I expected, she admitted after they had finished their main course. What did you expect? The ruthless CEO from the business magazines? Something like that. The media portrays you as a cold-blooded shark who built Innovate by stepping on others. Yeah, I've read those articles. There was a hint of bitterness in his voice. Is it true? Megan asked boldly. Did you force out your co-founder, Peter Walsh? Jackson's expression darkened. You've done your research. But no, the media got that wrong. Peter and I had different visions. The split was mutual, though not without pain. He was my best friend since college. The vulnerability in his admission caught Megan off guard. For a brief moment, she saw past the CEO facade to the man beneath, a man who carried regrets despite his success. Their desserts arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. As they ate, Jackson's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned, and declined the call. Everything okay? Megan asked. Victor, probably calling about the Apex decision again. He sighed. The board meeting tomorrow is going to be challenging. Before the pitch on Friday? Jackson nodded. If Victor gets his way, your pitch might be a formality. He's pushing hard for Apex. Megan felt a flash of indignation. So this dinner was what? A consolation prize? A nice gesture before you award the contract to someone else? No, Jackson said firmly, reaching across the table to touch her hand. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through her. This dinner was me trying to find an ally. Someone who understands what Innovate really needs, not what Victor thinks it needs. And what does Innovate need? Jackson's blue eyes held hers steadily. A fresh perspective. Authenticity. Someone who sees the vision, not just the bottom line. He paused. Someone like you, Megan. As they drove back to her apartment, Megan's mind was spinning with conflicting thoughts. Jackson had given her invaluable insights for the pitch, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play, both professionally and personally. The way he had looked at her, the lingering touch on her hand. Thank you for tonight, Jackson said as the car pulled up to her building. You've given me a lot to think about. Likewise, Megan replied. I hope your board meeting goes well tomorrow. It won't, he said with a rueful smile. But Friday might surprise us all. As Megan watched the car drive away, her phone buzzed with a text from Diane. How was the secret dinner with the CEO? Spill everything. Megan shook her head, wondering how she was going to explain that what had started as a professional courtesy had somehow become much more complicated. One thing was certain. Tomorrow's pitch preparation had just become the most important project of her career. Friday morning arrived with a torrential downpour, matching Megan's turbulent mood. She had barely slept, spending most of the night refining the presentation based on Jackson's insights. By the time she arrived at Carson & Associates, carrying both her umbrella and a tray of premium coffee for the team, her nerves were stretched thin. You look terrible, Harriet remarked as Megan set down the coffees in the conference room. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Megan replied dryly, checking her reflection in her compact mirror. The dark circles under her eyes were partially concealed by makeup, but nothing could hide the nervous energy radiating from her. Nathan burst into the room, his usual composed demeanor replaced by barely contained panic. We have a problem, he announced to the assembled team. Innovate Technologies just called. The meeting has been moved up to 11 a.m. instead of 2 p.m., and they want it at their headquarters downtown. Megan's stomach dropped. That's less than 2 hours from now, and it gets worse, Nathan continued, lowering his voice. My contact says the board chair, Victor Harrington, will be sitting in on the presentation. Apparently, he's pushing hard for them to go with Apex marketing. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Everyone knew what was at stake. Not just the prestigious account, but potentially the future of Carson & Associates itself. We'll be ready, Megan said with more confidence than she felt, avoiding Nathan's questioning gaze. She hadn't told anyone about her dinner with Jackson, and now wasn't the time. The team scrambled to finalize their materials, and at 10:30 a.m., they piled into taxis heading for the gleaming Innovate Technologies headquarters in the heart of the financial district. Rain lashed against the windows as Megan mentally rehearsed her talking points, trying to ignore the gnawing anxiety in her stomach. The Innovate building was a marvel of modern architecture, all glass and steel with an open atrium that soared 20 stories high. As the Carson team was escorted to the executive floor, Megan couldn't help but feel intimidated by the sheer success that surrounded them. They were shown into a sleek boardroom where several Innovate executives were already seated. Jackson sat at the head of the table, looking every inch the powerful CEO in a perfectly tailored suit. If he recognized Megan, He gave no indication, his expression neutral as Nathan made introductions. Victor Harrington sat to Jackson's right, a silver-haired man with cold eyes and an expensive watch that he checked repeatedly, making it clear their presentation was an inconvenience in his busy schedule. "Let's get started," Victor said curtly before Jackson could speak. "We have another presentation from Apex Marketing at 1 p.m., so please be concise." Megan felt her cheeks flush with indignation, but kept her professional smile firmly in place as Nathan began their opening remarks. When it was her turn to present, she stepped forward, making deliberate eye contact with each person in the room, including Jackson, whose gaze betrayed nothing. "While my colleagues have outlined our proposed marketing strategy," Megan began, "I'd like to address why Carson & Associates is uniquely positioned to represent HomeSync. This isn't just another smart home system. It's a revolution in how technology integrates with daily life, with privacy at its core." She launched into the presentation she had stayed up all night perfecting, emphasizing the aspects Jackson had been most passionate about during their dinner conversation. As she spoke, she noticed a subtle shift in the room. Executives who had been checking emails were now paying attention, and even Victor had stopped glancing at his watch. "The challenge isn't explaining what HomeSync does," she continued. "It's conveying how it feels to use it. The peace of mind knowing your data stays in your home, the intuitive interface that anticipates needs without being intrusive. Our campaign will focus on emotional connection, not just technical specifications." Jackson leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving her face. She couldn't read his expression, but she felt a surge of confidence nonetheless. Just as Megan was reaching the climax of her presentation, the boardroom door opened and a familiar face appeared, one that made her blood run cold. Peter Walsh, Jackson's former co-founder and supposed friend-turned-rival, strode into the room with the confidence of someone who belonged there. "Sorry I'm late," Peter announced, taking a seat next to Victor. "Traffic was a nightmare." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees as Jackson and Peter locked eyes. The tension between them was palpable, a living thing that sucked the oxygen from the room. "Mr. Walsh is joining us as a consultant on this project," Victor explained smoothly, his smile not reaching his eyes, given his expertise in consumer technology. Megan faltered for a moment, thrown by this unexpected development. She glanced at Jackson, whose jaw was clenched so tightly she feared it might crack. She had researched Peter Walsh extensively during her preparation, the co-founder who had amicably parted ways with Innovate 3 years ago, only to launch a moderately successful competing company. "Please continue, Ms. Taylor," Jackson said, his voice controlled, but with an undercurrent of anger that wasn't directed at her. Megan took a deep breath and found her place again, but the dynamic in the room had shifted. Peter watched her with calculated interest, occasionally whispering something to Victor that made the older man nod in agreement. When she finished, the questions began, probing, sometimes hostile inquiries that seemed designed to undermine Carson's proposal. Victor led the charge, with Peter adding pointed questions about market positioning and competitor analysis. Then Peter leaned forward. "Your privacy-focused approach is interesting, Ms. Taylor, but our research suggests consumers care more about convenience than privacy. How would you address that disconnect?" Before Megan could answer, Jackson interjected. "That's actually not what our latest consumer research shows, Peter. Privacy concerns have increased 47% among our target demographic in the past year alone." "With all due respect, Jackson," Victor said with a condescending smile, "Peter's expertise in consumer behavior is why I invited him here today. Apex Marketing's preliminary proposal aligns with his assessment." The implication was clear. Victor had already made his decision, and this presentation was merely a formality. Megan felt a surge of anger on behalf of both Carson and Associates and Jackson himself, who was being undermined in his own boardroom. "If I may," Megan said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "our research shows that while consumers may not explicitly prioritize privacy in surveys, their behavior tells a different story. The recent exodus from platforms with questionable data practices demonstrates that trust is the new currency in technology adoption." She pulled up a slide she had added at the last minute, a graph showing the correlation between privacy concerns and brand loyalty across different demographics. "This isn't just about marketing HomeSync's features," she continued. It's about positioning Innovate Technologies as a company that respects its users enough to put their privacy first. That's not just good ethics, it's good business. The room fell silent. Peter's smug expression faltered slightly, while Victor looked annoyed at having his narrative challenged. Jackson, on the other hand, had the ghost of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Thank you, Carson and Associates," Victor said abruptly, standing to signal the end of the meeting. "We'll be in touch after we've heard from Apex and made our decision." As the team gathered their materials, Megan caught Jackson's eye briefly. He gave her a nearly imperceptible nod that somehow conveyed both approval and warning. In the elevator heading down, Nathan turned to Megan. "Where did that privacy angle come from?" "It wasn't in our original proposal." "Additional research," she said vaguely, avoiding his questioning gaze. Nathan studied her for a moment longer. "Well, whatever inspired it, you were brilliant in there. But I'm not sure it's enough to overcome the obvious bias toward Apex." Back at the office, the team dissected the presentation, analyzing every reaction and comment. Megan participated half-heartedly, her mind preoccupied with the unexpected appearance of Peter Walsh and the obvious tension between him and Jackson. What had really happened between them, and why was Victor so determined to undermine Jackson's authority? As evening fell, most of the team had gone home, leaving Megan alone with her thoughts and a mountain of follow-up work. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. "Need to talk. Important developments. Meet me at Parkside Cafe in 30 minutes, JB." Megan hesitated. Professional boundaries were already blurred, and meeting Jackson again would only complicate things further. But curiosity and concern won out. She texted back a simple "I'll be there" and gathered her things. The Parkside Cafe was a small, dimly lit establishment tucked away from the main streets. When Megan arrived, she spotted Jackson in a corner booth, nursing what appeared to be whiskey. He looked different than he had in the boardroom, tired, frustrated, almost vulnerable. "What happened after we left?" Megan asked, sliding into the booth across from him. Jackson took a sip of his drink before answering. "Victor happened. He's making his move." "His move?" "To push me out," Jackson said bluntly. "He's been planning it for months. Bringing in Peter was just the latest maneuver." Megan's eyes widened. "Can he do that? You're the founder, the CEO. I own 42% of the company. Victor and his allies control 35%. The remaining shares are spread among smaller investors who typically follow Victor's lead." Jackson's voice was bitter. "The board meeting yesterday was contentious. They're questioning my leadership, my vision for HomeSync. Because you want to focus on privacy rather than monetizing user data," Megan guessed, the pieces falling into place. Jackson nodded. "Victor sees dollar signs in user data. I see betrayal of consumer trust." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "But that's not why I asked you here. Victor is planning to announce Apex as Innovate's marketing partner on Monday, regardless of your presentation." Megan felt her heart sink. "So it was all for nothing?" "Not necessarily." Jackson's blue eyes held a determination that hadn't been there moments before. "Your presentation today changed some minds on the executive team, and I have a plan, but I need your help, and it's asking a lot." As he outlined his idea, Megan's eyes grew wider. It was risky, potentially career-ending if it failed, but if it succeeded— "Are you in?" Jackson asked when he finished explaining. Megan took a deep breath, knowing her answer could change everything. Her career, Carson and Associates, and perhaps even the future of Innovate Technologies itself. "I'm in," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "What do we do first?" The weekend passed in a blur of planning and preparation. Megan barely left her apartment, surrounded by notes, market research, and half-empty coffee cups. Her normally tidy living room had transformed into a war room for what Jackson had dubbed Operation Integrity. On Sunday evening, she caught a glimpse of herself in the bathroom mirror. Her slender frame looked more fragile than usual. Her green eyes were tired, but determined beneath her auburn hair, which had lost its usual luster after 2 days of neglect. At 5'6", Megan had always carried herself with confidence that made her seem taller, a quality that had served her well in the male-dominated boardrooms of her career. "You look like you need sleep," she muttered to her reflection, splashing cold water on her face. Sleep would have to wait. Tomorrow could change everything. Monday morning arrived with pristine blue skies, a stark contrast to Friday's downpour. Megan dressed with deliberate care, choosing a forest green dress that complemented her eyes and brought warmth to her fair skin. She applied her makeup meticulously, ensuring the freckles scattered across her nose and cheeks were visible, a feature she had once tried to hide but now embraced as distinctive. When she arrived at Carson & Associates, Nathan intercepted her before she could reach her office. "Innovate Technologies called," he said, his expression grim. "They're announcing their marketing partner at a press conference at 2 p.m. today." Megan feigned surprise. "That's fast. Did they say anything else?" "Just that they appreciated our proposal, but would be going in a different direction." Nathan sighed, defeat evident in his posture. "I'm sorry, Megan, I know how hard you worked on this." "The day's not over yet," she said, with a mysterious smile that left Nathan looking confused. At precisely 1 p.m., Megan's phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. "Boardroom secured, you ready?" She responded with a simple thumbs-up emoji and grabbed her laptop and the presentation materials she had prepared over the weekend. "I need to step out for a bit," she told Harriet, who raised an eyebrow but didn't question her. Innovate's headquarters was buzzing with activity when Megan arrived. The atrium had been transformed with banners announcing the home sync launch, and tech journalists milled about, waiting for the press conference. Megan slipped past them to the executive elevator, where Jackson's assistant was waiting with a security badge. "He's gathered everyone in the main boardroom," the assistant whispered as they rode up. "Victor thinks it's a final review before the announcement." The boardroom was packed with Innovate executives when Megan entered. Victor Harrington stood at the front alongside Peter Walsh, both looking smug. Jackson sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Taylor," Victor said coldly, "this is a private meeting. I don't recall inviting Carson & Associates." "I invited her," Jackson said, standing. His presence seemed to fill the room as he moved to the front, gesturing for Megan to join him. "Before we head downstairs to announce our marketing partnership, there's something the board needs to see." Victor's face darkened. "We've already made our decision, Jackson. Apex Marketing will handle the home sync launch." "A decision based on incomplete information," Jackson countered smoothly. "Ms. Taylor has uncovered some relevant data that might interest the board." Megan connected her laptop to the presentation system, heart hammering against her ribs. This was the moment of truth. "While preparing Carson's proposal," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves, "I conducted standard competitive analysis on all major marketing firms, including Apex. What I found was concerning." She brought up the first slide, financial records showing unusual transactions between a shell company and Apex Marketing over the past 6 months. This shell company, Harrington Global Ventures, has paid Apex over $2 million since January. The same shell company that, according to public records, is owned by Victor Harrington's son-in-law. The room erupted in murmurs as Victor's face turned an alarming shade of red. "This is preposterous," he sputtered. "I don't know what you think you're implying." "I'm not implying anything," Megan continued calmly, advancing to the next slide. "I'm stating facts. Apex Marketing has been developing HomeSync's competitor product for the past year while negotiating to represent HomeSync." She played a video clip from a private investor meeting where Apex's CEO discussed their partnership with a leading technology firm to launch a smart home system with features suspiciously similar to HomeSync. "They've been gathering inside information on HomeSync to help their other client beat it to market," Jackson explained, his voice tight with controlled anger. "And Victor has been feeding them that information." Peter Walsh shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding eye contact with everyone. "You knew about this too, didn't you, Peter?" Jackson asked, turning to his former friend. "That's why you were so eager to consult on this project, not to help innovate, but to gather more intelligence for your own company." The unnamed partner in Apex's presentation. Peter's silence was damning. "This is a baseless witch hunt," Victor declared, but his usual confidence had evaporated. Several board members were already huddled together, whispering urgently. "There's more," Megan said, bringing up emails between Victor, Peter, and Apex executives discussing HomeSync's proprietary technology. Emails that had been obtained through completely legal means, as Jackson had authorized a company-wide security audit that had flagged the communications. By the time she finished her presentation, the atmosphere in the room had shifted dramatically. Victor and Peter sat in stony silence, while the board members conferred in hushed voices. The most senior board member, Dorothy Williams, finally spoke. In light of this information, I move that we delay the press announcement and convene an emergency closed board session. I also move that Victor Harrington be temporarily removed from his duties as board chair pending investigation. The motion passed with overwhelming support, leaving Victor sputtering threats about lawsuits as he was escorted from the room. Peter slipped out quietly in the confusion, his dreams of undermining Home Sync thoroughly dashed. As the boardroom cleared, Jackson turned to Megan, relief and gratitude evident in his eyes. "You were incredible." "We make a good team," she replied, finally allowing herself to breathe normally again. "We need to address the press waiting downstairs," Jackson said. "Care to join me? What are you going to tell them?" "That the Home Sync launch is proceeding as planned, but with a slight delay in announcing our marketing partner." His eyes held a question. "That is, if Carson and Associates is still interested in the contract." Megan laughed, the tension of the past hour dissolving. "I think Nathan might have a heart attack if I told him we turned it down." Downstairs, Jackson handled the press with the practiced ease of a seasoned CEO, announcing a short delay in naming their marketing partner due to additional vetting procedures. Journalists peppered him with questions, but he deflected them masterfully, his hand occasionally brushing against Megan's back as they stood side by side. The following week was a whirlwind. Carson and Associates officially secured the Innovate Technologies account, the largest in the firm's history. Nathan was ecstatic, promising Megan a substantial bonus and promotion. The board investigation confirmed Victor's betrayal, resulting in his resignation and a complete restructuring of Innovate's leadership, with Jackson emerging stronger than ever. 3 months later, the Home Sync launch exceeded all expectations. The privacy-focused marketing campaign resonated deeply with consumers, and pre-orders broke industry records. Carson and Associates' reputation soared, with Megan becoming something of a legend in marketing circles. On the evening after the successful launch event, Megan found herself once again in a quiet corner of the Parkside Cafe with Jackson. The small table between them held a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "To success," Jackson said, raising his glass. "To integrity," Megan countered with a smile. As they clinked glasses, Jackson's expression grew serious. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you." "Sounds ominous," Megan teased, though her heart skipped a beat. "Remember when we first met? In the hospital? When I walked into the wrong room, hard to forget." Jackson's blue eyes held hers. "It wasn't entirely a coincidence. I recognized your name when the receptionist mentioned you were visiting someone on my floor. I knew you worked at Carson and Associates. Your firm was already on our shortlist." "So you had your assistant send me to the wrong room?" Megan asked, surprised. "No, that was genuine chance, but when you appeared in my doorway, I saw an opportunity." His smile was both sheepish and charming. "When I said I've waited for you, I meant it in more ways than one. I'd been looking for someone who could understand what Innovate needed, someone with integrity and vision." "So you orchestrated our dinner? The pitch, all of it?" There was no accusation in her voice, only curiosity. "I orchestrated the opportunity. You did the rest." Jackson reached across the table to take her hand. "But somewhere along the way, it became about more than just business for me." Megan felt warmth spread through her at his touch. The chemistry between them had been undeniable from the start, but professional boundaries and the chaos of the past months had kept them focused on business. "What about now?" she asked softly. "The launch is successful. Victor is gone. Carson has the account. What happens next?" "That depends," Jackson said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Innovate is opening a new creative campus upstate next month. I'll be relocating there to focus on our next generation of products." "Sounds exciting," Megan said, trying to ignore the pang of disappointment at the thought of him leaving the city. "It would be more exciting with the right marketing partner," he continued. "I've already spoken with Nathan about establishing a Carson satellite office at the campus, with you heading it up, if you're interested." Megan's eyes widened. "A satellite office? That's a big opportunity." "Professionally, yes, but I'm hoping it might be a personal opportunity too." Jackson's gaze was both vulnerable and hopeful. "These past months working with you have been the best of my career. I'd like to see what else we might build together, beyond business." Megan felt a smile spreading across her face. 6 months ago, she had been frustrated with her career trajectory, worried about the Meridian failure and walking into the wrong hospital room. Now, she was being offered a chance to reshape her professional future and explore a connection that had been simmering beneath the surface since that first whispered, "I've waited for you." "I think," she said, squeezing his hand, "that wrong turns sometimes lead exactly where we're meant to be." As Jackson leaned across the table to kiss her, Megan knew that their story was just beginning. The hospital mix-up that had seemed like a simple mistake had set in motion a series of events that transformed both their lives. Sometimes, Megan reflected as she returned his kiss, the most meaningful journeys start with walking through the wrong door.